While working with any type of paint, you create waste that is contaminated by paint. Paint cannot be disposed of in your regular trash or the sewer system, so always make sure to properly dispose of this waste to minimize your impact on the environment. But how do you properly dispose of paint waste? In this video, we will show you how to collect the waste, how to clean palettes and brushes, and how to handle paint tubes. How do you collect paint waste? Always keep a glass jar or container with a lid at hand to dispose of your paint waste and contaminated things such as paper towels or tubes. Make sure to label this container so you always know what's in it. Once the jar is full, it can be dropped off at your local hazardous waste disposal point. If you use a tear-off palette, scrape off any wet paint using a palette knife and add it to your waste jar. Once the leftover paint on your tear-off palette has dried completely, you can either reuse the palette or tear off the sheet and dispose of it in regular waste. Plastic, wooden, or glass palettes can be cleaned using the same method with the addition of using paper towels for any stubborn paint residue. When cleaning your paint brushes, try to squeeze out as much paint as you can from your brushes using a palette knife. You may even be able to reuse this paint. After removing as much paint as possible, wipe the brush clean using a paper towel. How to fully clean your brushes depends on the type of paint you use. How do you deal with the paper towels you use to clean your materials? Use your paper towels or tissues until they are absolutely filled with paint. This helps to reduce the amount of waste. If the paint on the paper towels is still wet, add it to your paint waste jar and close it firmly. If not, you can add them to your regular waste. Please make sure to always collect paper towels with oil paint waste on them in a tightly sealed container. Cloths or tissues contaminated with products containing linseed oil, such as certain oil colors, have an increased risk of combustion when stacked on top of each other. After taking off the paint residue, you can continue thoroughly cleaning your brushes. Brushes with oil or alkyd paint on them can be cleaned using odorless white spirit. If you use odorless white spirit, make sure to have a separate jar with a tight lid and a label on it. Clean your brushes in the jar of odorless white spirit to remove the paint completely. After cleaning them, make sure to seal the jar tight to prevent evaporation and inhalation of the fumes. Once you're done, let the jar sit for a while and you'll see the paint start to settle in the bottom. After the paint has completely settled at the bottom of the jar, the odorless white spirit is ready to be used again. Pour the clean part into another jar and clean out the paint residue from the first jar using a paper towel. Add this dirty paper towel to your paint waste jar. To keep your hands clean, you can wear disposable gloves while cleaning out the jar. Add these to the jar as well once you're done with them. Brushes with water-based or water-mixable paint can be cleaned in a big jar of water with a little bit of dishwashing liquid. This should remove most of the paint. After this, you can simply clean your brushes in the sink using soap and water. The water in the jar you used to clean the brushes is now contaminated with paint. Do not pour this water down the drain, but let it sit for a while. After some time, the paint residue will sink to the bottom of the jar and the remaining clean water can be transferred to a different container and reused during the next painting session. Clean out the bottom of the paint jar using a paper towel. You can wear disposable gloves if you want to avoid contact with the paint. Add the paper towel and the dirty gloves to your jar of paint waste. If you don't want to deal with transferring the water, you can also choose to let the water completely evaporate from the jar and let the paint sit at the bottom. This way, you have a designated jar you can use for leftover paint. What should you do with empty paint tubes? Before buying your paint, make sure the sizes of the tubes or jars match your use. This helps minimize the chance of leftover paint that may become unusable over time. After using up the paint, even if it contains just a small amount of paint, you should add the tubes to your jar of paint waste. There are some useful tools to completely squeeze out the paint. Only if there isn't any paint left in the tube, you may dispose of it in your regular trash. These are our tips on dealing with paint waste. If you aren't sure what the rules in your area are regarding paint waste, please contact your local authorities for more information.